Are we totally happy? No, there's a long way to go. We're not celebrating, but we do believe that this could be a turning point for us.
Inter Miami avoided adding an embarrassing elimination to its 2023 woes, but only after needing 2 late equalizers and penalty kicks to survive a determined inferior opponent. Hello everybody, hola a todos. Welcome back to the second episode of Miami Total Football Radio this week. We promised we'd be back, and we are, to provide you with all the latest team news, analysis, opinions. Oh yes, there will be opinions on this show, inside information, general punditry, and much, much more. My name is Franco Panizo. I am one of your usual co-hosts. We had another member of the three of us, or the trio, on the pod earlier in the weekend, Jose Armando. He has been subbed out for this episode because we need the heat. We need el ajicito, or la ajicita, which, of course, I am talking about Andrea Yanez. Andrea, how are you today after a late and long Wednesday night? We were in the press box for a while, doing post-game interviews for a while. I know you live closer to FIU Stadium than I do, so maybe you didn't get home as late as I, or as me. But how are you doing today? Are you tired? I'm tired.
Yes, I'm tired, but I'm going to say one positive thing. Maybe one of the few positive things that I have to say tonight is that it was closer to my house. So finally I could enjoy not driving for an hour or more than an hour to get to the stadium. So it was nice. It was nice to get it right here, to get it in the Real 305. Not to get anyone offended, but this is Miami. The game yesterday was in Miami. So happy, but tired. Happy for not having to drive all those miles, but not happy with that game. We'll talk about that. I'm ready.
Yes, we will talk about that. We will dive into that in good detail, as well as, of course, preview the upcoming game against the Columbus Crew. I'm exhausted. I left yesterday by the time we wrapped up with the interviews with both team members. It was almost close to midnight. By the time I got home was 1. I stopped at Wawa to get some food because I planned to rewatch the game immediately because the press box, no offense to FIU or FIU Stadium or the Miami FC people, but the view there was terrible. It was terrible. And obviously we had sat there last year, and I've been there to other games before, so this is not a new thing for me, but just very hard to analyze the game. So I got some food at Wawa late night and rewatched the game to better analyze what we saw live and in person from the tight press box in the, what corner is that? Southeast? No, southwest. Dang. See, that's how tired I am. Southwest. All right.
Why do people always talk here with directions? I don't even know what north, south, east, west. I have no idea. And I bring this up because yesterday you asked me north, south, and I was like, what the hell?
Okay, so clearly your internal compass does not work. So we will have to get you one for your birthday. All right, Andrea, we've got a lot to talk about on the second episode of Miami Total Football Radio. Let's get to it. All right, so Inter Miami survives the U.S. Open Cup third round Miami Clásico against Miami FC on penalty kicks, winning 5-3 from the spot following a 2-2 draw versus the crosstown foe. We talked, Jose and I, earlier in the week, and we thought that, they would play a stronger lineup than they did. This was the starting group, and it was in a 5-2-2-1 formation. If you really want, you could say it was the WM formation, the old school WM formation that you don't really see that often, which means 3-2-2-3. So you can look at it any way you want. I'll go with the 5-2-2-1. So Drake Callender in goal. The back line from right to left was Robert Taylor, Christopher McVeigh, Ryan Saylor, Kamal Miller, Harvey Neville. The first line of the midfield, you had Dixon Arroyo and Jean Mota. Second line in the midfield, and they were not playing out wide, they were playing in the half spaces, kind of like joint tens, were Benjamin Cramashi and Nicola Stefanelli. And up top, you had Schneider Borgelin. That was Inter Miami's starting group. Christian Sorto scored in the 3rd minute for the home side. Schneider Borgelin tied things up near the end of regulation, almost at the death in the 89th minute to force extra time. Late in extra time, DeAndre Yedlin scores an own goal in the 116th minute, and it looked like that was it for Inter Miami. But an unlikely hero in Ryan Saylor donned the cape and saved Inter Miami's blushes with another equalizer, 118th minute. That forced penalty kicks. Inter Miami goes perfect from the spot, making all 5 of their takes. Miami FC missed only one, which was their 4th attempt, and that proved to be the difference because Inter Miami advanced to the next round. And they already know their opponent, Charleston Battery, on May 9th or 10th. That's who they were drawn against, and it'll be at home at Drive Pink Stadium. So, Andrea just went over the match in terms of the goals and the big events. We have to dive into the performance. We will do that here in just a few seconds, but just your overall thoughts one day after seeing it all take place right before your eyes.
Inter Miami were lucky yesterday. Inter Miami were lucky. They continue to play badly. Not badly in terms of not being able to pass the ball and do all that, but in terms of getting the results, getting goals, playing consistent football. So they were lucky. For me, yesterday they were lucky. When the DeAndre Yedlin own goal came at the 160 minute, I told you, well, they deserve to lose. They deserve to lose because they were the bigger team, the big budget team, and what they presented yesterday was not on par of what it should be or what this team could be. So I think they were lucky, to tell you the truth. That is the conclusion that I get. They were very lucky. For me, this win in penalties doesn't prove anything, doesn't make them better, doesn't, for me, like, it doesn't. It simply doesn't. For me, it was a lucky game for them.
I think you just used the word lucky more than you've ever used the word lucky, all combined throughout the all Miami Total Football Radio appearances that you've made. Listen, I agree that they were a bit fortunate in this one. I'm using a different word. I agree they were a bit fortunate to get away with this one in terms of the performance levels they put forth. They were trailing for much of this game, despite being the better team. And they went down early. They gave up an early goal, a nightmare start for Inter Miami on the tails of a 6-game losing streak. As bad a start as you could have expected for Inter Miami. And from that point, it was an uphill climb because Miami FC, como equipo chico, like a small team, like the smaller team, like the inferior team, threw numbers back. And they looked to hit on the counter and try to stay compact and organized. And Inter Miami had the lion's share of possession. But it was possession, once again, without production. They could do almost nothing with the ball, except for the same tactic of getting wide and crossing it into the penalty area, which was Miami FC's game plan. We talked to Miami FC head coach Anthony Pulis after the game, and he said that, yeah, they wanted to clog up the middle. And they did that, and Inter Miami had a very tough time finding an answer and finding a solution. Very little through the middle, almost next to nothing. And it took an 89th minute goal from Borgelin, header at the back post on a cross, finally, that paid off, and they equalized. I will say the positives, because there's going to be a lot to criticize here. I think Inter Miami, they took their penalty kicks very well. We'll dive into that in more detail a little bit later. And they never gave up. They stayed with it. They could have rolled over. They could have thrown their arms up in the air and said, especially during this losing run, they could have just been like, all right, it's just not going to happen for us. We're just not good enough. But they stuck with it. So it was gutsy in that way. But that it took them penalty kicks to beat Miami FC. And the manner in which they got to penalty kicks was very unconvincing. And something that, if you're an Inter Miami fan, has to leave you frustrated. Cool, great, they advanced. Awesome. But that does not mask the ongoing issues that exist with this team. Because yesterday's performance didn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. And we talked to Phil Neville post-game, Andrea, and you can agree with me or disagree with me. Phil Neville looked emotionally drained post-game. Like, exhausted. And I guess it was late, but he just looked so... Like, Anthony Pulis looked in better state than Phil Neville. Phil Neville did not look like a head coach that had just advanced to the next round. He looked a little beat up. He looked so exhausted to me. And I can imagine trailing for 90 minutes, or for the better part of 90 minutes, thinking this is really going to happen. This embarrassing elimination loss is going to happen. And then the team rescuing those blushes, preventing that from happening. I'm sure, it was an emotional roller coaster for him, and as it was for, anybody watching it. But Inter Miami, it's just not good enough. And the result should not mask that. No debe confundir a nadie. That result should not confuse anybody. And for the record, because I've seen it been said a few times, yes, Inter Miami won the penalty kick shootout, and they advanced because of that. But they did not win this game. Technically speaking, this will be registered officially as a draw because the game ended 2-2. Now Inter Miami won on penalty kicks. They move on. That's good for Inter Miami because they had to at least get through. At least, at a minimum, they got through. But they did not win this game. So that means they are now 7 games across all competitions without a victory. That's a new franchise record. That's not good enough. And I don't see the positive signs that I saw against Houston Dynamo. Yes, this was a weaker team. But just tactically, I don't see a team that has a lot of ideas. And they'll get better when they bring in their more quality players. But the level of the opposition is also going to get better because they return to MLS play. They're not going to be playing an inferior opponent like Miami FC, with all due respect to Miami FC. But even Anthony Pulis acknowledged as much in the postgame. So there's a lot there to dissect, a lot there to discuss. Andrea, I know you said it was lucky. But in terms of the performance that Inter Miami put forth, what were your thoughts? Predictable, stale, slow? What did you think about what they did on the field during the course of the 120 minutes before the penalty kicks?
Not good enough. Simply not good enough. For me, Phil made a mistake in the lineup, and he knew it. That is why he changed everything at the start of the second half, because he knew he messed up. That lineup was, for me, knowing that he came from losing 6 games in a row, was unacceptable, because this was a must-win game. And yes, you can say Inter Miami, yes, they are in MLS, in USL, blah, blah, blah. But listen, for me, he didn't take the game seriously when I saw the lineup, because this was not a game to improvise like he did. And it didn't work for him. That is why he made the changes since the start of the second half. And it was very disappointing to see that this team, even if they bring new blood like they did in this lineup, you had Harvey, you had McVeigh coming back to being a starter, you had Borgelin and Benjamin. For me...
Benjamin? Who's Benjamin? Come on, Andrea.
Cremachi. His name is Benjamin or not?
I know, but you gotta, for the people that don't speak Spanish and listen to the pod, you gotta say Benjamin. Or at least say the last name.
No, his name is Benjamin, not Benjamin.
At least say the last name, Andrea. At least say the last name. But continue, please.
So they were just not good enough. And the tactics were not good enough. we all know, and everyone knows, even Anthony said it in the post-match interview, that this was what he expected. Inter Miami doesn't play another way. They just play through the wings and nothing else. Crosses from their left back or right back, crosses from their wingers, but they don't play anything through the middle. So everyone knows, every team knows what to do. And what Miami FC did was attack them in a counterattack. And from the second minute that they got that goal, they got it because they took advantage of that. In a mistake, in a counterattack,
But
they
in
took
that play,
advantage of that.
Even in that play, Andrea, Miami FC showed the type of creativity that Inter Miami very rarely shows.
Exactly.
Because yes, the play starts with Miami FC winning a 50-50. It's a long ball played up top to the striker. The striker then, he gets creative. He brings the ball, he traps the ball, and then with a heeled pass, mid-air, flicks it back to an onrushing teammate, who then takes Christopher McVeigh one-on-one, creates enough separation, and then takes a shot. A low shot that Drake Callender has to do better on. You'd expect, coming from U.S. men's national team camp, that he should be full of confidence, and he makes a tremendous error. The ball goes through his hands and through his legs before going into the back of the net. It was a very routine and savable shot. Drake Callender makes that stop 99 out of 100 times. But in this one, just gets through his hands. But again, the error comes as a byproduct of the creativity that Miami FC had to get to that part of the field, to get to that opportunity. And Inter Miami doesn't have that.
They don't have that. The strikers are only waiting in the area, and if they don't get a ball, they don't get a ball. They are not dangerous. And then here, that is what I mean. They got lucky because in the second half, that's why you have a central defender scoring a goal in the last minutes of the match, because then you have to bring numbers up top. You get exposed in the back. If they were playing against a team, especially if Miami FC could have gotten all their players, the ones that were injured and were not available because they had a short bench, only 4 players available, they would have made them paid. If Miami FC had all their players available, that I know them, they would have made them pay. Miami FC didn't have anyone on the bench that could come and play. They had rookies, someone that they signed this week. So if they had all their players available, it would have been different, because Inter Miami doesn't have any new ideas. They got better once Yedlin and Negri came in, but then you saw the same type of game. Negri and Yedlin sending a lot of crosses without anyone getting anything. Then when Pizarro and Joseph came in, you saw the game at least get a little bit better in the middle of the field, because they were moving around. Joseph is a little bit more dangerous. And Pizarro tried to move the game around a little bit. But other than that, Inter Miami didn't show anything until that Mota's
shot
that hit the crossbar. They didn't show anything through the middle. So it's a big problem, because that is why I say again, they were lucky, because even Miami FC, with all the players available, would have made them pay because of that. And the problem with Inter Miami is that you don't see, me personally, I don't see the team getting better in that aspect, because I don't see Phil is married to that idea that the team has to play through the wings and has to cross the ball. He has no other idea, or at least he hasn't shown it this season. So for me, it is preoccupying, because Inter Miami should be better. They have quality players that should be better, but then you see them playing in positions that are not their best, like Robert Taylor. What did you see from Robert Taylor in the first half?
Not much.
Nothing.
Not much.
Because he is playing in a position that Stefanelli also. We were talking about this. So that is why this team suffers. And for me, it boils down to the tactics. And for me, the one responsible for this is Phil and his technical support staff.
So you touched on a lot of interesting points. And I want to go back to the creativity. Because it's just something they don't play through the middle. And I agree that you need to have some variety. Whether you have a 10 or not, you need to have some variety to help keep a defense guessing, to help try to unbalance the defense. Either that, or you have to be so good at the one thing that you try to do that it doesn't matter if you're not good through the middle. But they're neither very good out wide, and they also have nothing in the middle. Now, I don't think there's an abundance of creative players on this Inter Miami side in terms of players that can unbalance the defense either with a through ball or one-on-one on the dribble. There's not an abundance of that. There's players with different qualities and different strengths, but no one that can really unlock a defense consistently. Robert Taylor has good dribbling skills. I think he's one player that could unlock a defense if he executes and has the opportunity to dribble by and do what he can do. And we've seen him do at different times. We saw it last year in moments. But we haven't seen that from him in the few appearances that he's made this year. So individually, I'm not blaming Robert Taylor. I'm just saying that the one player that they do have that's creative, we're not seeing that from him. Is that tactical?
Yes.
I think it's partially tactical. Yeah, absolutely. He's playing as a wingback as well. So I think that's absolutely part of it. Does he bear some responsibility? Absolutely. Sure. But it's also tactical. So individually, Inter Miami lacks creativity. Collectively, they also lack creativity. And that is on Phil Neville. That is 100% on Phil Neville. Because he helped build this roster. He talked in preseason about how this is the group he wants. And yet, they're struggling in a big way. 7 games in a row across all competitions without a win. The results speak for themselves. And I'm looking for the number. 39 crosses. All you have to do is look at that stat and the shots on target from each team, and you can guess what kind of game this was.
Only 7 shots on target from Inter Miami.
So what, if you just look at those stats, what do those stats tell you? It tells you there's a team that had a lot of the ball and that crossed the ball a whole lot.
But didn't do anything.
Couldn't do anything
Exactly.
with that. That you don't even have to watch the game. You can look at just the numbers, and that numbers will just paint that picture for you.
And then for me, then Phil comes out and says that they were clearly the better team. And I'm like, what? Where?
So what I think Phil's meaning by that is that they were the protagonists in terms of dictating the tempo with the ball. But Miami FC was okay with that. Miami, like Anthony Pila said post-game, was not going to go blow for blow, toe-to-toe, tu-a-tu with Inter Miami. Because that would be practically tactical suicide. Yeah. Because you're not going to have the manpower nor the strength to go toe-for-toe with an MLS team that has players like Inter Miami has. Yes, they're going through a bad run, but there are some quality players in that group. I'm convinced of that. I think they're underperforming. I think Phil Neville has a big part to do with that. And I tweeted that post-game, or during the game, actually. And I stick with it, regardless of the result. I think we have seen enough. I think we've seen enough. It's been almost 3 seasons. This is not the first time Inter Miami has gone on this type of poor run of form, atrocious run of form. But yet, Phil Neville remains as head coach. It's long been time for him to go. It's long been time, especially this season for a few weeks now. Like, the team continues to struggle. The team continues to have to climb from the bottom as opposed to be fighting in a better position. And it's been like that. It's been like that throughout the course of the franchise's history. But it's been like that for Phil Neville, who has had an extended period of time to work on this and try to get this right. And he's not completely to blame. There are other parts here. The player's not producing. Rodolfo Pizarro's obviously not really a desired piece by my sensation. And they're stuck with him because they couldn't get rid of him. Yeah,
but you cannot say a player like Pizarro handicaps you because any team in MLS will want Pizarro.
No, I don't know if any team in MLS. Coach, I don't know
any
about that.
Coach, if you tell any team in MLS right now, they could get Pizarro.
As a DP,
Well,
I don't think every team takes
no,
that.
as a DP, no, obviously
But he's
not.
a DP. But he is a DP for Inter Miami, which is why I'm saying it kind of hamstrings them a little bit, or it handcuffs them. Sorry, it handcuffs them.
For me, it handcuffs them because Phil doesn't like him, doesn't like his style of play, and doesn't know how to play him. That is the truth. That is the truth for me. And that happens with Robert Taylor. That happened with Bryce Duke. That happened with Ariel Lassiter. That happened with Julian Carranza and everyone who has left this team. And those players in the years that this team has of existence, and the players that had left since Phil came here, all of them are having great careers somewhere else. And it was because Phil didn't know, they didn't perform in Inter Miami because Phil didn't know how to use them. Yes, I know Joseph doesn't score. I know Pizarro is not the designated player, or that hasn't have the numbers of the designated players that designated players do in this league. But it is because you have a coach that clearly doesn't like him, that doesn't play him in the position that he likes to play, that doesn't build the game, the tactical formation to help them. Then you get a Stefanelli who is leading the same thing. How many positions have we seen Stefanelli play in this season? If you ask a fan of Inter Miami, I ask the fans, do you know which is the position of Stefanelli? They don't know.
I don't think Phil Neville knows. I don't think Phil Neville knows. He hasn't figured it out.
That's what I mean. So I think it's unfair for the players to say, oh, they're not I have told you this before, especially with Joseph. I think it's unfair for the players because they are not playing comfortably for me. And you can see that on the field because they are clearly not doing good. And for me, that is something that when you lose that as a team, it's not something easy to find again and to build up. And for me, this qualification, esta clasificación, will not mask that.
And it shouldn't mask that. It should not mask that. And that's why yesterday I tweeted it towards the end of the game. Before the equalizer happened, I tweeted out along the lines of, if this isn't what's going to force the owners into making a decision, and honestly, I don't think it would have been. I think if they lose that game last night, I think Phil Neville's still the head coach today. I told you if they lose this game, they should fire Phil. But that's what I'm saying.
It was
even if they would have lost, I don't think the ownership group would have fired him. Do I think he should have gone? Absolutely. I think he should have gone probably after that FC Dallas game where they lost at home. Mm-hmm. Now, if the ownership is going to stick by him and preach, family vibes and we support Phil Neville, okay, then what happens is not only on Phil Neville. We can't just blame Phil Neville anymore.
Exactly.
You also have to look above him
owners.
And who's calling the shots. Because, listen, I think if Chris Henderson had the power, I think Chris Henderson would really contemplate letting Phil Neville go. If he had the full power. But there's different elements at play here. There's different dynamics.
Also to blame.
But there's different dynamics here.
For me, Chris Henderson has not been up to with what was expected from him, to tell you the truth. If I were the ownership of Inter Miami, for me, is that I agree with what Jose told you a couple of podcasts ago, that they don't care about this season. They want this season to be over. They don't care if they win anything. If they are in last place, there is no relegation, so they don't care. They want to be without the sanctions and be able to bring whoever they want from next year apart, so they don't care what happens. So that's why we see Phil still. We see still Chris Henderson in their posts. And we're going to see them until, I guess, if the team loses 10 in a row, maybe they take some steps. But even then, as you say,
so that's my point. Because let's just say they lost last night. And they suffered the embarrassing elimination at the hands of their inferior opponent, the crosstown foe. I still don't think Phil Neville gets fired. I still think he's head coach today, preparing for the game against the Columbus Crew. And that's where, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for ownership to finally realize that it's time to make the decision? Is it going to take Miami to lose 10 games in a row? Is it going to take them to go winless for another 2 months? Like, when is enough enough? And that's a serious question I have, because I don't know if they'll pull the
For me,
plug.
it was long ago.
We can say our opinions. The fans clearly are frustrated with Phil Neville. You see the social media posts. It's clear that a large portion a good portion of the fan base is unhappy with Phil Neville at this point in time. But listen, Andrea, the question is, what do you think it would take for the ownership to make the decision to let Phil Neville go, to relieve him of his duties? What do you think it would take?
I think it would take for them to care about the season, and I don't think they do.
So Phil Neville's here through the end of the year, according to you.
I don't know if until the end of the year. It could be. Listen, we have seen situations in this league where a coach is in the last place and he gets a 5-year contract, like Vermes in Sporting Kansas City, where he's the technical director, the GM, and everything. We could see that with Phil, because in MLS you don't get the pressure of relegation. So yes, could be possible that they keep him this whole year. It could be clearly possible, and for me, it's a possibility, because with this crisis that Inter Miami is living, after they spent all preseason saying that they were building a good team and everything that has happened from that moment until now. They wanted to fight
for a top 4 spot in the Eastern Conference.
And everything that has happened from that moment until now tells you that was a lie. Because clearly, if you wanted to win, Franco, you in anywhere in the world, you lose 6 matches in a row and you're gone. That is a fact.
Almost anywhere else in the world, I agree. Almost anywhere else in the world, I would agree with you there.
So for me, that tells you, and that's why I'm convinced, and now I agree with Jose, that ownership doesn't care about this season. And all those promises from the beginning that we're going to win top 4, blah, 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 were just words, because we haven't seen any action. And then we've seen trades, we've seen the movements that the team is doing, and you're like, okay, so how is this getting the team better?
I mean, I still think the problems that they had before Wednesday still exist.
Exactly.
Nothing has changed. All they did, they advanced on penalty kicks, scraping by, suffering, as Phil Neville said in the day after availability on Thursday morning. Sufrieron, Andrea, sufrieron. Agarrale Miami FC. Hey, mira, look.
Miami FC was missing their most important player, who is
I want to dive into that. But let's be fair to Phil Neville and Inter Miami, because upsets happen in tournament games and cup games, right?
Yes,
they happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the manner in which this happened, and they advanced, but the manner in which this happened leaves a lot to discuss, a lot to analyze, a lot to unpack, a lot to unravel. Clearly, Inter Miami did not view this game as, and Phil Neville didn't view this game as, my job's on the line. That's my sentiment. That's my sensation, my supposition. The lineup he put out there, saving Campana, saving Coco Jean, saving Sergi Christoph, first choice players for him, shows that yes, of course, he's not trying to risk their health, because he's thinking longer term, the MLS regular season. If he's thinking that, then he doesn't feel, going into Wednesday night, that his job is on the line. He might feel pressure. He might feel frustration because it's not coming off for him. And again, Inter Miami fans on social media, you look at Inter Miami's social media posts on a game day as of late, and you see calls for Phil Neville's head over and over and over again. So I believe that he does feel frustration and some pressure, but I don't feel he fears for his job. Like, I don't think he's worried that he's going to get fired. And
I could see that being true, because I thought that he could feel a pressure and could have that fear if he lost this game, but after what he chose to start in this game and the tactics that we saw from the team on that first half, I thought, like, well, no, he is not nervous that he's going to get fired. Because when Franco, when you see a team that is in esa racha, in that moment that they're leaving, you see that urgency. Tell me, did you see urgency yesterday from Phil and from the team in that first half?
No, I did not.
You didn't,
I
right?
didn't. I did. And look, Andrea, you and I sat next to each other in the press box, and I'll reiterate some of the things that I said to you yesterday for the listeners. The lineup, to me, the attitude of the team, Phil Neville's attire. You can even say Phil Neville's attire, and some people might think that that's ludicrous and over analyzing it, but I don't think so. The whole thing to me said Inter Miami didn't take this game as seriously as they would an MLS regular season game. Phil Neville wears suits. As of late, he's been wearing nothing but suits. Unless it's somewhere cold, then he's wearing like cold gear. It wasn't cold last night in South Florida. And he was just wearing warm-up pants and a polo. Why is it that he wears suits for MLS games and casual gear for the Open Cup game? Why? Because it's on national TV? Because it's an MLS regular season game? Like, that to me is just a sign of him saying this game is not as important as the production that is an MLS regular season game. And then I think you saw it with the tactics. I think you saw it with the starting lineup, and I think you saw it.
Yeah, they didn't have an urgency. They didn't. Only player I saw playing with a little bit of urgency is Mota, and I guess that is because that is his personality. But then I didn't see anything. I didn't see any. And when Sorto scored that goal at the second minute, I didn't see any urgency from any of the players. That was really preoccupying because I reiterate at the beginning of the season, they were saying we're going to win the US Open Cup, we're going to go to CONCACAF Champions League, we're going to win the Leagues Cup, we're going to go to CONCACAF Champions League. Is this the way that this team is going to play against Cruz Azul?
By the way, I don't think preoccupying translates to English the way you're trying to make it preocupante. I get what you're trying to say. I think the word you're looking for is worrying, concerning. I think that's what you're looking for, just because you've done it twice. But look, just diving into Phil a little bit more. I do think he feels some frustration. Again, he looked emotionally drained after the game. During the broadcast, you see it. They got close in on him. They zoomed in on him during the goal celebration to the first equalizer. Borgelin's header at the back post off of a Jean Mota cross. He throws a furious fist into the air in celebration. Kind of like a defiant, like, yeah! But he has to have felt it. And again, I'm not saying he felt his job was on the line. I just felt, the ongoing criticism that would have come had they lost. And that's why I'm trying to keep the same tone, but just generally speaking, from a public perception, if they had gotten eliminated, how much worse it would be.
Yeah. And
it would have made national headlines. It would have made international headlines. It would have gone in England. You would have seen David Beckham's Inter Miami team loses to third division club. Like, that would have made
and especially let's remember
headlines.
That Anthony was his assistant his first season here. So it would have been double.
And you could feel the tension. You could feel the tension. In the press box, listen, we had Miami FC's PR staff in front of us, directly in front of us, and then over diagonally from us, you had Inter Miami's PR staff. And there were some very big eyeballs that I saw when Inter Miami got scored on in that third minute. I saw like, uh-oh. I saw some actual worry, and that's just from the press box. Now imagine on the field. Look, there's an anecdote, an image that the broadcast did not catch that I saw when the game ended. And I think it's telling. If you analyze it, I think it's telling. So Kamal Miller steps up, he scores. Inter Miami's bench, which was closer to the goal where the penalty kicks were taking place, erupts into a scene of festivities. They're celebrating, they're happy. A very calm and quiet Phil Neville immediately turns to walk towards the midfield line to go shake Anthony Pulis' hand and say good game. His son, Harvey Neville, rather than immediately going and erupting and going to celebrate with teammates, he seeks out his dad. He looks for Phil. And he goes and he hugs him and gives him a warm embrace. And then Harvey lets go and he goes and celebrates with the rest of the team while Phil keeps walking towards Anthony Pulis. That, to me, is a sign of, we did it, Dad. We did it. We're through. Don't worry. We made it. Like, because I can't imagine that Harvey Neville is oblivious to the fact that Inter Miami fans are unhappy with Phil Neville. And look,
and even in the dressing room, it must be awkward for him.
But like even in the game, cameras and the broadcast caught this very clearly. La Familia, when the game was looking like Inter Miami was going to lose 1-0, La Familia belted out a very loud, profane chant in Spanish. And if you want to see it, I've tweeted it on my Twitter account at Franco Panizo. It's not uncensored. I've done it in English and in Spanish. You can see it there. But clearly Inter Miami fans are not pleased. And this is not going to get better unless the team starts winning consistently. I don't see signs that point to Inter Miami winning consistently. The games that they have in May, the schedule is very, very difficult.
Yeah, listen, we have to talk about that because the schedule that they have is looking bleak for them. We're going to talk about that, but they have Columbus, they have New England Revolution.
It's not a favorable schedule for Inter Miami.
And, for example,
Atlanta United, Orlando City, Nashville, the New England Revolution. It's not a... And listen,
it's not a favorable schedule. Teams in this league, for example, now that we mentioned New England Revolution, that didn't have a good year last year. They kept the same coach, they brought some new players, and now they're having a good season. You don't see that with Inter Miami. And why do fans get mad? Because the common denominator is Phil. Because this year they brought a lot of players. Along with Henderson, they built this squad how they wanted it, with players that they wanted, that no one, apart from Pizarro, nadie los obligó. No one forced them to bring. And it hasn't worked. And that is a difference. That is an example of why fans are mad. New England last year was bad. This year, look at them. With the same coach, you see the work, you see the difference. You see a better team. We don't see that with Inter Miami, unfortunately. And this year, they don't have Gonzalo Higuaín. So no one, until this moment, is coming to save them.
Right. So collectively, and just to go into the game again a little bit more, they don't have a difference maker. And I said that at the beginning of the season. I saw some interesting pieces added, like Franco Negri. I still think Nicola Stefanelli will prove to be a good player eventually for this team. But they don't have a difference maker. Someone that can take this team, put it on his back, and push the team over the finish line to a victory. They don't have that. So it's on the collective, it's on el funcionamiento, the function of the team, to work well and win games. And it's not working. Tactically, Phil Neville is still all over the place. Still hasn't figured out what the best formation is, what the best tactics are. Like, he still hasn't figured it out.
The same problem since he has come here. It's the same problem. So, listen, I understand the fans getting mad at Phil. I really like Phil as a person. But as I've said here a lot of times, for me, a deal breaker is the fact that players leave this team because supposedly they are not working, they are not giving what they need to give. The perfect example is Bryce Duke, and those horrible comments.
I don't know if he's the perfect example.
Yes, because Phil made those horrible comments that he will never be a 10, that he was not quality. And look how he has played in Montreal. Look at him. People in Montreal are happy with him because he has the potential. And for me, when Phil said that about a player in his team, about one of the future that the team had before they traded him, players of the team told you everything you need to know. So for me, it's not, unfortunately, it's not working. And even though I like Phil, I like him as a person, it is not working for him in MLS and for him in Inter Miami.
Now, philosophically going to the Wednesday night game against Miami FC, the Miami Clásico, even the starting formation, just from a philosophical standpoint, this is just now my opinion, not analysis, which is also can be an opinion, but this is just more my, like, To me, playing with a 5-man backline with 3 center backs is like
What?
not really going. Not really. It's not really going for it. It's not really going for it. You're playing with 3 center backs to have some defensive solidity, but again, then you're emphasizing the defensive part as opposed to the attacking part, right? Like, and look, and Harvey Neville, I don't think he had a bad game, but he was playing left wing back, and he's not left-footed.
Yeah.
And on multiple occasions, you saw that he was not able to whip in across with his left, that he wasn't comfortable enough to do so, that he would try to cut back on his right, look for the pass. So these are things that I think Phil Neville has in his just DNA as a head coach up until now, playing players out of position or in the positions that aren't
I understand
their best.
I understand the idea that some coaches have in this modern football that players should play at least 2 positions to help the team, but clearly it is not working in Inter Miami, and it has not been working, and I don't think it's gonna work until you play Stefanelli, Robert Taylor, Rodolfo Pizarro, and anyone. Any of those that we have talked about ad nauseum in this podcast, if you don't play them in their position, it's not going to work.
I don't want to pick on Harvey here, but Harvey, like, I just saw him time and time again look uncomfortable trying to do anything with his left.
Listen, the comments even
So he had
in
to
the
cut
broadcast,
back. He had to cut back on his right constantly.
everyone was saying,
and that slowed the
Phil,
whole attack.
Even to his son, everyone was saying, even to his son, Phil plays him out of position. So it's clearly not working for Inter Miami, and that is why I don't like it. Happened last year with McVay. I didn't like to criticize him because it was not his position. When he made a mistake, it was not his position. It's really hard, and and you're right. It was hard for Harvey. It was really hard for Harvey. It was really hard for
it's why he gets pulled out. It's why he gets
Exactly.
pulled out of the game after 60 minutes or so, or whenever he was subbed out, because he wasn't making enough of an impact. I don't think he had a bad game. I think he was involved. He got forward well. He was on the ball often, but he couldn't make much happen with it because he's not left-footed, and he did not feel comfortable whipping across on his left. So he constantly cut back on his right. That slowed down the attack. That allowed the defense, Miami FC defense, to reset, and it just took away from the attack. Now, something you touched on, and I haven't really dived into it too much, which I do think is something that needs to be talked about. Miami FC had a short bench. They had injured players. Now, that's not Inter Miami's problem, nor is it their concern. But Miami FC, as the game wore on, and yes, they were defending as part of their strategic approach, they got gassed. And you saw the cramps come in for multiple players, and they were fatigued. They didn't have the deep bench that Inter Miami went to. Inter Miami made 5 substitutions, as is allowed in regulation. In extra time, you're allowed to make 1 more, as per a recent new rule. So Inter Miami made 6 changes. They had a much fresher team than Miami FC during those extra 30 minutes. And they still could not take the lead. Mm-hmm. They fell behind off of listen, DeAndre Yedlin tries to cut off a through ball played in behind. He does so very poorly. Miscommunication between he and Trey Callender. The ball goes into the back of the net. It looked doom and gloom in that moment. Mm-hmm. It looked like Miami FC had it in the bag. I thought it was over. Yeah. I didn't see Inter Miami coming back. Yeah. Now they do. Ryan Saylor got played up top as a striker in part because he was cramping. And 2 minutes later, he gets a great header for his first career goal. A very timely moment to come up with your first career goal. And he heads very well at the back post off of a cross from Franco Negri, an exquisite cross from Franco Negri. But that's what it took for Inter Miami to avoid an embarrassing defeat and an embarrassing elimination. And I like the word you used. I think this is a crisis for Inter Miami. You might think that's exaggeration. The team is in a bad way, and they don't show signs of getting out. Now, Phil Neville said after the game he hopes this is a turning point, and it can galvanize the group and rally them and push them on to bigger and better things. And hopefully for Inter Miami's sake, that is the case. But based on what we're seeing on the field, I'm not convinced.
I'm not convinced either.
They will get Leo Campana for this weekend's game against Columbus Crew. They'll have Serhi Christoph. They'll have Corentin Jean. They'll have some of the guys that came off the bench. They'll be relatively fresh because they don't They didn't start and play the 120 minutes. So, that will help their cause, but still, the level of opposition will also increase. So let's talk quickly, unless you have something else to add, about, again, I thought it was a gutsy win. They stayed with it, never gave up, never rolled over, always kept believing, which is definitely a good sign. Something else that I will say that they did well with was the penalty kicks. They scored all 5 of them, and they were
right.
Yes,
because Drake didn't do good, but
Drake didn't make a save, but
the takers were
did
very
well.
good, and they surprised me because
Victor Ulloa surprised me.
Ulloa, Kamal Miller, Franco Negri. Usually,
I did tell you in the press box I thought Kamal Miller would take one, right? When we were doing, I challenged you to the little exercise when I was like, penalty kicks are looming, Andrea. Give me your 5. It doesn't go out based on the players that are on the field. You don't have to give me them in order. And I told you Kamal, and you were like, no way I would let a center back. I think your exact words in Spanish were, I would never let a center back take a penalty kick.
Yes, I don't like center backs taking penalty kicks.
Hey, he won it.
Unless you're Sergio Ramos, right? But I don't like central defenders taking penalties. I'm just like that conservative. But he really surprised me. He took a good penalty. Also, Franco Negri. But listen, I've talked about this, and since he came here, we've talked about it. That left foot that Franco Negri has is very good. He's very educated. It's a zurda educada, as we say in Spanish. So it didn't surprise me that he did a good penalty. And Mota, well, of course, Mota has, I guess it would be, for me, difficult to decide who is better to kick the ball, if Mota or Pizarro. But he's one of the best in the team, so I was sure he was going to score. And Joseph scored also. For me, it wasn't a doubt.
So let's go in order. Really quickly. Joseph Martinez scored low and to the left. Then Victor Ulloa came up, and he scores mid-range to the left. A very well-taken effort. I did not expect Victor Ulloa to kick the penalty kick like that. And his celebration afterwards, he threw a fist in the air, but it was pretty calm. So not really shaken or bothered by the moment. Then Franco Negri came up with a longer run-up. I was worried when I saw that run-up. I was like, uh-oh. But he tucked it in nicely away to the bottom right. Jean Mota went 4th, and he provided the scariest moment because he shoots mid-range to the right. The goalkeeper gets a hand on it. Almost makes the save, but the ball is hit too hard, so it goes into the net. I think if the goalkeeper had put a firmer hand and push it upwards, I think he makes the save.
No,
because he just tried to block it and parry it.
Yeah, the problem with
that
ball
goes in.
is the potencia that Mota hit it with. That was the problem. That is why the goalkeeper couldn't save it. He was close, but it was too hard kick. I don't know how to say it in English.
I still think if he tries to push it up instead of trying to just stop it, I think he could make the save. I think he can make the save. Now Kamal Miller, the 5th and final taker after a bad miss from Telfar, I think it was.
Yeah.
Bad miss from Miami FC. It goes over the crossbar, so Drake Callender didn't even make the save. Kamal Miller comes up with that left foot and hits it to the right, and it goes into the back of the net as the goalkeeper guesses the wrong way. And that's it. Inter Miami wins. They did very well on their penalty kicks. You can't criticize them for that at all. If there's one thing you can't criticize, it's how they took their penalty kicks. Cool, composed, clinical, put all 5 away. Yeah. Put all 5 away. And
that was a positive.
That's a highlight. Mm-hmm. That's a highlight.
That was a positive.
If we had to go just to put a bow on this here, if you had to give me, I won't give you a number. Just give me some players from Inter Miami that you thought played well. I have a few names. I think I have 5 or 6 that I thought played well. Not amazing, but well. Starters or off the bench. Do you have names, or do you want me to go first and then you can...
Okay, I will tell you. I will tell you that I like Mota.
Mm-hmm.
I like Kamal Miller.
Agree.
And maybe I could say I like a little shaky Dixon Arroyo.
So I would say Kamal Miller and Franco Negri were good for me.
Oh, well, Franco Negri is true. But he came in,
I thought Borgelin was a handful up top. I thought he was solid. I like Pizarro off the bench.
Yeah,
I really
Pizarro
like.
and Negri were, for me, difference makers for this.
See, so I can't say that they played bad, but you again have to take into context that Miami FC was on empty, right? And they didn't have the options on the bench to go to try to reinvigorate and freshen the team up. So I think against an exhausted opponent, it helps you to look well. So I can't criticize them for it, but I think that analysis is still part of the equation. I think Gene Mota had a good game or a solid game.
Yeah, solid game.
And then Ryan Saylor. I think you can't get away from this game and not because of the goal, but he also had some nice interventions, including one nicely timed slide tackle that prevented a through ball in behind that could have been very, very troublesome for Inter Miami. So I think those 6 were right. I named 6. I think.
Yeah, you named 6.
Miller, Saylor, Negri, Mota,
Pizarro,
and Borgelin. Yeah, I think those six, came up. Good enough.
Well, at least we estamos de acuerdo with 2, with Mota and Kamal Miller, and I also agree with the subs, Negri and Pizarro.
No, you don't give Saylor. I thought Saylor had a solid game.
I don't know.
He was. Listen, the goal is not on him. The goal is more on Christopher McVeigh and Drake Collins in the first goal.
Yeah, but
and then the second goal is just.
What I like from Saylor is his efforts, because even though he hasn't played this season, he put a lot of efforts. He was one of the players that you see he wants that opportunity.
And celebrated like you would expect a young center back to celebrate. Not very euphorically, just kind of a
nice man, yeah.
A bit muted in his celebration. I mean, it's a massive goal.
Yeah,
it's a massive goal.
Yo te apuesto, if Kamal scores that goal, he would have celebrated more.
Somebody's taking their shirt off and running around the field.
Yes.
It was a very
imagine if
celebration.
Joseph scored that goal, man. We would have saw a Goku celebration, a Dragon Ball celebration, something like that, something crazy. Because wow, in that moment, everyone thought, and it was a heartbreaking moment for Miami FC, because I really thought, and everyone thought, that it was over after that Yedlin goal, after that Yedlin mistake. And listen, we have to talk about that a little bit more. Yedlin has been, since he came to MLS, it has been, let me put it like this, it has been up and down, and it has been true. What happens to every player that comes from Europe, especially American players that come from Europe and come to play in MLS, I think they get comfortable. And we've been seeing that from Yedlin. For me, he should have known better, and he should have kicked the ball. Or
I think he, like el busca cortarla, like he comes to cut off the pass, but he does so awkwardly, and he hits it with his less favored left foot.
Yeah, that is his strength.
I think he was a little clumsy there. Did not necessarily time it, or did not get the right movement there, and then that leads to him knocking the ball to the back of the net. When I saw that ball rolling to the back of the net and it was clear it was going in, no one's getting to it, like I could you could hear like that split second of radio silence, and how it was going to evolve into Miami FC celebrating and Inter Miami just can't believe what's happening. But they listen, they stuck with it, they got the goal. They got it done in penalty kicks. So they're on to the next round. Again, Charleston Battery at home at Drive Pink Stadium, May 9th or 10th. That is still to be confirmed. Andrea, very quickly, because we've talked about this game a good bit. Probably as much as we've talked about any one game this year. Columbus Crew, Inter Miami travels for the final game in this 3-match and 8-day stretch away to Lower.com Field. Hopefully they won't have any travel issues, because apparently on their way down to FIU Stadium on Wednesday night, the bus broke down and the team had to carpool, and they took like 15 cars, and that's how they got to the game on Wednesday night. But they'll fly to Columbus. Andrea, you expect a stronger lineup?
Yeah.
What is the key to the game for Inter Miami?
Defend well. Defend better than they did against Houston. Defend the 90 minutes well. Because if not, teams already know how Miami plays, and they're going to wait like Houston did. They're going to score on them. One in the last minutes of the game as Houston did. So Inter Miami has to be concentrated on defense. They have to be concentrated on defending the 90 minutes, especially as a team like Columbus.
Just to get something.
Just to get something, yes. You have to. This is a game that is no perdas. Don't lose. They have to defend well 90 minutes, and if they can get a goal in the counter attack, in whatever play, in a set piece or whatever, they get it. But for me, the priority in this game has to be defend, especially with a team as Columbus that is better than the Houston Dynamo, and is better than Dallas and a lot of the opponents that they have lost against in this racha that they have.
And I don't necessarily disagree fully that the defense has to play better and more concentrated for a longer stretch, but I don't put it on the defense. They've given up 9 goals in 8 matches. That's not a terrible return or a terrible performance from the defensive side of things. It's in the attack where they're struggling. They have scored 6 times in 8 games. That's less than a goal per game in MLS play. The attack has to find something. Campana will be in. Coco John probably will be back in. Pizarro could start. Joseph could potentially start if they want to go with both strikers up top. Although Phil Neville said that, Schneider Borgelin's pushing for 90 minutes.
This game is for 2 strikers, to tell you the truth.
Well, regardless.
He played against Houston with 1.
Regardless, for me, the key to the game is Inter Miami finding its way in the attack. Putting that ball in the back of the net. I know that's such an umbrella term, but I think it's being clinical. Whatever chances you get, you have to put it away. It doesn't do Inter Miami any good, which I don't think that'll be the case here, if they have the ball, possession without production, and they can't put that ball in the back of the net. Because then we'll hear Phil Neville say, we were the team that deserved to win because we had the ball and we were dictating the tempo. Yeah, you can have the ball you want. If you don't do anything with it,
yeah, look at Real Madrid with Tati Castellanos. Only 4 times he got to Real Madrid's goal, and he scored 4 times when Real Madrid dominated the game. Doesn't mean if you have 100% possession and you can lose the game, because the game is about scoring, not about having the ball.
I do like a team, though. I've said this before. I do like a team that has possession, but you have to turn that possession into production, possession with a purpose. We need to see from Inter Miami some more clinical finishing in the final third. That's the key to the game for me. If you have 3 chances, you got to put at least 1 away. Give yourselves a chance to get something out of this game. Andrea, quickly, and we'll wrap up with this. Just give me a formation. Don't have to give me the personnel because, it's going to be a pretty much first choice lineup. But give me just the formation. If you think defense, do you think they stick with the back 5 or the back 3, however you want to look at it?
Yeah, I think they will stick with that. I think they will stick with that. With different personnel, as we said, but I think they are sticking with that with this game against Columbus.
I can see that. I will say 4-4-2 diamond. I think Joseph Martinez and Leo Campana.
Against Columbus?
I think so. Maybe Borgelin. Maybe Borgelin gets the start, but, But I don't know if he can play good with Campana. See, now I've made it complicated for myself. 4-4-2 diamond. Joseph gets the start. Let's see. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back for a very quick Q&A session. Our final thoughts. We'll do that after this. Q&A time. Andrea, we'll just tackle one, and it's a question from a longtime listener. And he's asking something that we've already addressed, but we can go into a little more detail here just to add anything that we might have left off. Una chance más para decir lo que piensas. Matthew Hanau How much longer do you think Phil's leash got with the most recent win? And win is in quotation marks for Matthew Henao. Andrea, your thoughts, because we've talked about it. You think he's going to be here for the season, or for much of the season. So is that? I guess that's your answer, right?
Okay, yeah. My personal opinion is that his leash should have gotten shorter, even with the result yesterday. That is my personal opinion. But analyzing stuff, as we said before in this podcast, I think the ownership doesn't care this season, and they may keep him until the end of the year. If he gets a result, if he gets a couple of wins, I don't know with this calendar that they have. It could be, but analyzing everything, I agree with you, Franco, that the ownership doesn't plan to let him go. And that is because I agree with Jose that they don't care about this season, what happens this season.
So I think they give him until early fall. And that's almost when the season's over. But I think that's when they give it to. Like, so much of the season, but not all of the season if things aren't going well. I think they're going to give him the summer transfer window. Whether it's Messi and Busquets or whoever else comes, they're going to upgrade the team, right? Let's say Messi doesn't come, right? Let's say that doesn't happen. They're going to bring somebody else in to upgrade this team. Whether it's a 10 or whatever. They're going to do something to upgrade this team. So I think they'll give him the opportunity to try to make that work. Now, obviously, that player will have to get integrated into the group, adjust to life in MLS if he's an extranjero, a player, a foreigner. But I think then at that point, if he can't get it done by, early fall, then I think when playoffs are, the picture's taking shape, I think that's when they could pull the plug if Inter Miami's not looking like it's going to make it, or they're out of it altogether. So he's got a long leash. Undeservingly or not, I think he's got a long leash. All right, so let's leave it there, Andrea. Final thoughts. I'll go first here on this one. And it's because Inter Miami, after the last podcast that we did, made a trade. They sent Ame Mabika, the 24-year-old center back, to Toronto FC in exchange for $100,000 in 2024 general allocation money. There's another $100,000 in GAM, as it's also known, based on performance metrics. So if Mabika hits certain metrics or certain milestones or certain statistics, then Inter Miami will get up to another $100,000. So another Inter Miami player that's gone, that has left the team, pretty short-lived tenure overall. Thought he had his moments, but I think there were some limitations, some real limitations. That video that Jose posted on his Twitter a month or so ago of him doing, headed drills, kind of like without someone kicking the ball to him, without just like underhand throws. I think that shows that there's some very big limitations there for him. A good locker room guy, by all accounts. Someone that, had come on here in Miami Total Football Radio and been an outstanding guest. But I think there were limitations, and I understand why Inter Miami would part ways with him. He wasn't poised to get very many minutes, especially now that Kamal Miller is within the group. Now, I do think it's interesting because, I saw this comment on, I think, social media. Someone was like, all the players change, but the head coach doesn't. I thought that was, it's not an unfair comment.
Ya me aburrido. How do you translate that? I've been getting bored of saying the same thing over and over again. Everyone that leaves goes and la rompe everywhere they go.
I don't know about everyone, but a good percentage. A good percentage of
the ones that are marginalized here, like let's start with Luis Morgan. Go, leave, and their career explodes. Julian Carranza explodes. Bryce Duke is going to explode.
I don't know. You have a crystal ball to say Bryce Duke's going to explode. So
he's a good player.
We'll see. We don't know that yet.
But
your point.
83 games.
Your point is not incorrect though. That there's plenty of players that have left.
And Mavika, maybe with a new coach. Listen,
but I don't see him.
better.
I see him just being a depth piece in MLS. I don't see him being a starter. I think there's real limitations there. That
maybe with a new coach he can start something new. Listen, I don't think, not only Phil, but I don't think his coaching staff, Jason, and all the coaching staff, well, this year they added Darren and Javier Morales. Javi, I trust a little bit more, but I don't think they do as a good job developing players. I have said that 1,000 times here, but hopefully that gets better. Listen, for the team, it has to get better. It has to get better.
Okay. All right. Andrea, your final thought.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast. We don't answer all the questions, but I wanted to say thank you to Don Cafecito, who always sends his question, to those no, sorry if I'm butchering your names, Joseph E. Also, Matthew, that we answered his question today, and everyone that writes to us on Twitter. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you continue giving your opinions and asking us your questions.
So then that does it for a fiery, critical episode. I guess that's pretty much most episodes, no? But that does it for the second episode of Miami Total Football Radio this week. Thank you guys so very much for listening yet again. We will be back next week to rewind, recap, and analyze the match against the Columbus Crew. We'll see if Inter Miami can stop the bleeding or if the poor run of form continues under Phil Neville for another match day. So for Andrea Yanez, I am Franco Panizo. You have been listening to Miami Total Football Radio, and we'll talk to you guys again next week.